Pancake everyone, dear friends. We use money every day as a means of exchange to buy all kinds of goods. But are you sure that you're holding a real banknote? And if not, who is involved in creating counterfeit money? That's what we're talking about in today's episode. What started it all in this paper business, and who are the counterfeiters? The meaning of the word counterfeiters is clean from the sound. Fake coins. In ancient times, paper money didn't sympathize. There were only coins made of various metal alloys, which could be counterfeited and passed off as genuine. The first counterfeit coin was from the island of Aegina between Argolis and Attica, dated to the 6th century before Christ. It was made of copper with a silver coating, closely imitating a real coin but in a smaller size. Originally, real coins were equated in value to gold and were made of expensive metals such as gold, silver, and occasionally copper. Counterfeits in turn were made of lead, which was a widely available metal, and only covered with a thin layer of a more expensive metal on top. Periodically, princes and lords engaged in such forgery, although it was believed that they simply spoiled the coins rather than engaged in fraud. But people were often not happy with such actions of the authorities and staged uprising. The counterfeiters themselves, in the modern sense of the term, are people who manufacture, store, transport, and distribute counterfeit money. Coins are no longer counterfeited, only banknotes, mostly dollars and euros, in large denominations, and less often in small ones to make it easier to dispose of them. Depending on the country where the fraudster operates, they produce that national currency. Such fake money is mostly sold through the darknet, for cryptocurrency. The currency is exchanged at a rate of 20-30%, less often 50%, of the full face value. For example, for 50,000 fake dollars, a person will have to give 15,000 real ones. The higher the quality of the counterfeit banknote, the higher the price of it. They pay for money, as well as prohibited substances, through drop-offs, and then give the location to the customer. Counterfeiting money is not an easy process. You can't just draw it by hand or print a copy from the internet. So how do they do it in a way that even ATMs can accept such bills? It's definitely not a good idea to draw or print a similar bill by hand or from Google Images. Not even school kids do that. Counterfeiters try to make the fake bill as close to the original as possible, including the signs, special security threads, emblems, and holographic ink. This requires using precision work with magnifying glasses and inkjet printers. Ordinary office paper won't do either. A special mixture is used to give the bill its glossy finish and rustling sound. It should also be noted that the currency of different countries has different sizes, which must be taken into account when making them. It's meticulous work, isn't it? Moreover, depending on the year of release, the picture and inscriptions may change, as well as the ink used. All of this adds to the trouble for counterfeiters. I'd like to point out that counterfeiting bills with a small denomination is extremely unprofitable, because the production cost will be several times higher. This is precisely why sellers in stores carefully inspect bills with a large denomination, fearing fines and shortages. Each country has its own steps to protect its money from counterfeiting. But most of these points, counterfeiters manage to replicate. Paper with a specialized mixture and a thin mesh on the back of the bill is one of the easiest parts. It's harder to replicate watermarks, but by studying the technologies, it's no longer a huge problem. Imagine, even the eagle print, which most often appears as an emblem, has been counterfeited by experienced typographers. Although it should be noted that the method is unique, and without specialized equipment it cannot be done at home. This effect is famous for the fact that when the angle changes, the color of the image changes, but the ink itself doesn't move even 1 mm. This is a precise application of pigment in the same place, but with different colors. The most difficult part, which is particularly impossible to replicate, is the magnetic elements inside the bill, which cannot be seen with the naked eye. How to tell if what's in your hand is a counterfeit? When holding fake money in your hand, the trick may not be immediately noticeable, and special lasers or lamps, no one carries them with them. The most important rule is to look, turn and feel the banknote with great attentiveness and diligence, especially if it's a large denomination. The most well-known advice is to hold the banknote up to the light, which will allow you to see if the watermark is present and if it reflects correctly. On some banknotes, the inscriptions on the side are raised. This effect is absent on counterfeit banknotes, so carefully fill the entire area of the valuable rectangle. The so-called tilt effect can be seen on the ornamental ribbon on the front side of the banknote. If you look at it at an acute angle, letters or numbers may appear on the ribbon, depending on the country whose banknote you are holding. If you look at the banknote directly, you won't see any signs. It's especially important to check banknotes thoroughly where there are no special devices that determine authenticity. In small shops, kiosks, cafes, in the market, or if you're selling something for cash. Also, protective fibers can help distinguish a real banknote from a counterfeit one. They're colored areas with short, thin threads inside the paper. The security thread is located inside the paper layer, and it can be noticed by the characteristic manifestation of rectangles on the banknote. Invisible stripes when viewed at the right angle merge, and the pattern becomes monochrome, but when the position is changed, multicolored stripes are visible. Microperforation is also used, which are small perforated holes in the shape of a number. However, the most reliable way to determine the authenticity of banknotes is to go to a bank. They will tell you for sure whether they are real or not and conduct an inspection in front of you. If the banknote turns out to be fake, you will have to explain how it got into your wallet. If it's real, they will return it without any questions. Why can't we just print more money to eradicate counterfeiters? As children, we all wondered why we couldn't just print more money to eliminate poverty and leave fraudsters without work. But now, as adults, we know that there is a concept called inflation, where money loses value due to rising prices. Counterfeit money has a particularly harmful impact on the economy, as more money only means higher prices and the devaluation of the money itself, rather than an increase in the amount of products being sold. This can ultimately lead to a shortage of almost everything, even if everyone has $1 million. In the United States, the volume of counterfeit dollars increased by 10–15% annually on average. The most commonly counterfeit bill is the $100 bill, which accounts for more than 90% of all counterfeit money. The Federal Reserve and the FBI are both seriously concerned about the growing problem of counterfeiting, especially since the dollar is a global currency. It's impossible to calculate how much counterfeit money there is in the world, as entire large centers engage in this practice, producing money on a conveyor belt. Throughout history, there have been many cases where during wars, one of the adversaries started producing banknotes of the enemy state to undermine the economy and incite internal uprising among the people. There is no need to delve far into history. The most prominent example is Napoleon Bonaparte, who ordered the production of counterfeit money in order to undermine the economies of Russia and England. During its war with Russia, Japan also engaged in counterfeiting by issuing fake rubles. During the World War II, the Third Reich produced a massive amount of counterfeit British pounds, causing significant damage to the British economy. Japan also engaged in the same secret policy towards the United States. It should be noted that such a method of wearing down the enemy is rarely resorted to, as the global economy is interconnected between countries that engage in trade relations. The most prominent and large-scale cases of fraud in modern history. The Canadian Real Dupont and his three brothers are recognized as the biggest producers of counterfeit dollars in history. Back in the 70s, they printed and managed to sell about $110 million worth of counterfeit currency. At the beginning, the price of the DuPont currency was 15–20% of the face value, but it turned into 50% by the time it reached the end of the chain. Marcus Glinden is considered the biggest counterfeiter in Britain. He produced over 14 million £1 sterling coins. As the result of his activities, in 2002, every 109th coin in £1 sterling in the United Kingdom was counterfeit, and today every 40th £1 coin is fake. He was arrested in April 2007 and sentenced to 5 years in prison in December. Meanwhile, Viktor Buranov is recognized as the most famous counterfeiter in the Soviet Union. He printed 30,000 rubles, mainly in denominations of 25. He constructed his own printing press, developed forms and inks. He spent over 11 years on this underground activity. It took him 4 years to learn how to make watermarks and paper of the required quality, 2.5 years to make ink for deep printing, and another year to make ink for surface printing. He ordered parts for the equipment in stages from various factories. He bought chemical reagents through third parties. During the years of experimentation in his barn, he studied etching and photo work, mastered copying and albuming, gelatin, PVA and PVC, learned to make wooden and rubber plates. In 1978, he was arrested for counterfeiting money and sentenced to 12 years in prison. He remained the #1 counterfeiter in history. What awaits those who desire to live richly and pay with counterfeit money? Punishment for producing fake money has always been extremely severe throughout history. In the Middle Ages, particularly in Central Europe, counterfeiters were boiled in water or had melted metal, usually lead, poured down their throats since it was the metal from which fake coins were made. In the Russian Empire, the punishment was also strict. Those found guilty in counterfeiting credit notes were stripped of all rights, savings and property and sent to hard labor in exile. Even in the USSR, producing and distributing counterfeit coins or bills could result in the harshest punishment, the death penalty. Currently, in most countries, producing and distributing fake money or securities could result in 5 to 15 years of imprisonment. Liability occurs when the person using counterfeit money knows that it is fake but tries to pass it off as real. The best way to protect yourself from fraudsters and potential punishment is to use non-cash payment and electronic currency. They cannot be counterfeited and you don't have to check for watermarks. Europe and the United States have safeguarded their citizens in this way, gradually introducing non-cash payments everywhere. The percentage of crimes related to counterfeiting money has decreased by 10% in the last year. If you happen to receive counterfeit money after a transaction or purchase, you should immediately contact the bank or the police. Explain how you got the bill, who gave it to you and where. This way, you can protect yourself from trouble and unnecessary suspicion since the article is quite heavy and the punishment is severe. Never attempt to pay with counterfeit money if you already have doubts about its authenticity. The least that can happen is a long conversation with the police. And the worst is that you could be charged with distributing counterfeit money and you will have to work hard to prove your innocence. Currently, fake bills are easiest to find in places with intensive commercial activity that are not equipped with special machines. These often include cheap cafes, transportation, markets, and maybe even the beach. Our episode is coming to an end, and today we discussed one of the most pressing issues of the modern world. Have you ever experienced such fraud? Share your stories in the comments and tell us how you think we should fight counterfeit money. Don't forget to hit the like button for real, so you can always stay up to date on the most interesting news. Until the next episode, goodbye!